Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Been wanting to do this video for a little while and I don't know why I want to do it. It's just one of those things that is like maybe something I should talk about. I've said this before, I'm not really a review channel. It's not really what I want to get into, just reviewing all kinds of stuff. But I do like talking about the gear that I use, why I use it, what I like about it, what I don't like about it. And so today I want to talk about a lens that I've been using for a while now. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, when I got this lens, the only reason I got it is because I switched from Canon to Fuji. There was some cost involved when you switch over from one system to the other. What I did was I got a lens that would kind of cover my needs. Maybe for the short term, I was thinking it wasn't a lens that I would keep for very long, but let me explain what I did. So when I switched from all Canon gear to Fuji gear, as a Canon shooter, the two lenses that I used the most were a 17-40 and a 70-200. Both were f4s. I also had an 85 1.8. Didn't use that lens all that much, but it was there if I needed the faster lens for certain situations. But those were the three main lenses that I used on a regular basis. When I switched over to Fuji, of course, you know, you're not going to get as much for your used gear going into the new gear, so there was some switchover. I couldn't replace all three of those lenses in one swoop. So what I ended up doing was getting the Fuji X-T4 with the 16-80 f4 kit lens. Now, when I got it, I really thought this is going to be a temporary thing. It's just going to basically meet my needs, and it's going to be a temporary solution until I can acquire some more lenses. Now, let me tell you, one of the first things that I thought and kind of directed my thinking that this was a temporary solution was because it was a kit lens. Typically a kit lens is kind of that cheapo lens that they throw in there so that you get, you know, something to go with the camera you just bought. And kit lens usually means not the quality high-end lenses. Now there are some kits out there that are very nice. Canon does couple some of their camera bodies with some L series lenses, so they're putting them with the nice lenses. And in this case, Fuji, even though this would be considered a kit lens, I do not think it feels like a kit lens at all. It's not plasticky, it's not cheap, it doesn't have a floating aperture. It's f4 all the way through. As you zoom from 16 to 80, it'll hold that f4 aperture, which a lot of people might think f4 is not fast enough for you. For me, what I do, f4 is plenty. I'm not, you know, 2 or 2.8 certainly is nice. I actually have an older Canon manual focus lens that I've adapted to this that's a 1.2. It's a lot of fun to shoot with. And it's got some specialty features that you can do with it. But f4, by and large, meets my needs for what I do. So I'm not worried about the 4, but the fact that it's consistent all the way through is great. It does not feel like a cheap kit lens. Now, one of the things that I have tried very hard on this channel to avoid talking about, or just the way I say it, I'm not a big fan of when everybody says this lens is comparable to this lens on a full frame. I think those days are gone. The crop factor is what it is, but to be honest with you, we're 20 years into digital, and to compare everything to full frame anymore, to me, just doesn't make sense. It's confusing. If you read the comments on a lot of YouTube channels, you will see a lot of beginners are just completely confused by the whole crop factor thing. Listen, this lens is a 16-80 on any camera that you put it on. Doesn't matter the size of the sensor. However, that being said, when I switched from Canon to Fuji, I had a 17-40. A 17-40 on a full frame camera, which I was shooting with a 5D at the time. This 16 on an APS-C size sensor is not as wide as the 17. So one of the things that I gave up initially was having 17 millimeters on a full frame camera. Now I've got 16 on an APS-C size sensor, which would be kind of equivalent to a 24 on a full frame. So I did not have as wide angle of a lens in this 16-80. Now, was that a big deal? Most of the time it wasn't. 16 is a fairly wide angle lens. I could do most things with it. If certainly any event, weddings, that kind of thing, that focal length was fine. However, once I started shooting real estate, I did purchase a 10-24 to get that extended wide angle focal length. Now, as far as this lens is concerned, on a telephoto basis. 80 millimeter on a smaller sensor like this is what I would consider kind of a mid to slightly longer portrait size focal length. So anything that I want to do, headshots, any kind of portrait work, it is fantastic. 80 millimeters is a great focal length, and everything in between, you know, obviously from 16 to 80, fantastic. It's been a great product lens as far as focal length. That's fantastic. So from a telephoto side of things, unless you need something super long, you're photographing wildlife or something like that, the 80 millimeters meets every need that I've had. Okay, so let's talk about depth of field a little bit with this lens. Now, I know that bokeh and blitzed out blurry backgrounds is kind of a big deal with a lot of people. So they buy the f2s and the 2.8s and the 1.2 lenses, and they love that just blurry background. I think it's overrated. I'm not a big fan of it. It's not that I don't like that look. It certainly has its place, and there's a time to use it, and I'm for it. But to rely on it to make depth in your shot is, I'll just say it. I don't think it's professional. I don't think it's the professional way to get depth and dimension to your image. It should just be a look. It should be an effect that you're doing. Lighting is how you get depth and dimension. So when it comes to depth of field with this lens, if you want the blurry background, you can do it. Certainly the longer the telephoto lens that you use, the more shallow depth of field you're going to create. Of course, the distance between your subject and the background is going to have a big deal to do with it. So how you choose to set up and pose your subject and the area that you shoot is going to benefit all that blurry background if you want it. You can achieve it with this lens, no problem. And of course, if you want a great deal of depth of field from front to back, you can achieve it with this lens as well. It stops down nice and neat. And so basically, I have had no problems achieving whatever depth of field that I want with this lens, whether it's shallow or whether it's deep. No issues whatsoever. Now, of course, sharpness is a big deal with any lens. We want our images to be sharp. Now, zoom lenses traditionally were never as sharp as prime lenses. I remember when I first got into photography, zoom lenses were crap. Let's just be honest. Back in the late 80s when I was a teenager getting into all of this kind of stuff, zoom lenses just were not going to cut it the way a prime lens would do it. However, today the zoom lenses they create are phenomenal. This lens is no exception. I'm going to show you a couple images here as far as sharpness. I actually have been quite blown away, not only by the lens, but the Fuji camera system itself. But this lens is incredibly sharp. I would put it side by side any Canon, Sony. Yeah, it's a super sharp lens. Now for me, I do a lot of stock photography, headshots, events, portraits, but I also do a lot of product photography. And for me, a lens has got to be able to focus at a very close distance. That's a big deal for me. Not every lens will do that. A lot of times you get a macro lens to do those product type things. But with only one lens in my arsenal for this situation, I needed this lens to be able to focus in tight. I was super surprised how well this does at close quarters. Now I'm going to do a little shot of this quarter just to give you guys an idea. I was able to focus within 6 inches of my subject. So if I'm at 80 millimeters, only 6 inches away, you can see here the results of how close I'm able to come in and focus, which is fantastic if you're at a wedding and you're doing that detail shot of the rings. Typically in the past I've had to have a macro lens or some extension tubes or something like that to pull that shot off. This 16 to 80 is able to do it. Okay, so let's get to the business side of things, and that's how much does this lens cost? If you buy the lens outright all by itself, $799. If you buy it in a kit, for instance, the X-T5 costs $1699, where the X-T5 with this particular lens is $2199. That makes the lens about 500 bucks. So in a kit, about $500 for the lens. If you buy it outright, $799. If you find it used, you're going to spend even less than that. So that's kind of the cost of the lens. Not a super expensive lens. Okay, so when I bought this lens and this system, got into Fuji, did I have every intention to sell this lens as quickly as I could? Yes. Do I still want to sell this lens? Not really sure that I do. There are some lenses that I'm looking into. The 80mm macro is high on my list. The 50 to 140, another one high on my list. If I got those two lenses along with my 10 to 24, would I stop using this lens? Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see. Would I recommend it to somebody starting out? Absolutely. You know, depending on what you do, this may be the one and only lens you ever need. It's quite a nice little lens. It's small, compact. It's perfect for traveling if that's the kind of thing you do. You don't have a lot of bulk with it. So I would highly recommend it. And again, am I looking to sell it? Probably not. It will probably be a backup lens on a second body at some point, even if I acquire some other bigger, better lenses. One of the things that I have found that it does very well is an event, like a wedding. I pretty much could shoot the entire day with this one lens. And you know, switching lenses back and forth can be, you know, time consuming and a pain in the rear at a wedding like that. So it's a great event lens. So there you have it, kind of a simple little review video today. You know, I love talking about the gear that I use and how I achieve the things that I do with my little business. And the Fuji 16 to 80 has been a big part of that the last couple of years. So wanted to share that. A lens that I never really thought I would like, I have really enjoyed. And it has been a fantastic tool in my bag. So if you got questions, let me know. If you have used this lens and you've got thoughts about it, let me know about that. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Leave me a thumbs up if you could. And if you haven't subscribed, think about doing that as well. And you guys have a fantastic week. We're getting through January and diving into 2024. I hope the new year is going well for you. And I will see you guys in the next video.